Human. What if being forced apart brought us even closer to our own humanity and a better way to work by paying attention to what matters most, human connection? Work Human Cloud motivates us to always recognize and celebrate each other from anywhere, through anything. Leading companies use Work Human because this is where the world is heading. After all, without the human, it's just work.
Well, hello, people of LinkedIn. I am Dr. Patty Fletcher. I am here today talking to you from our offices in beautiful Framingham, Massachusetts. We are starting to open up in Massachusetts in a way that I'm going to be pretty honest with you. When you're out walking in Boston or whatever local town in Massachusetts you happen to be in, it kind of feels like, haven't we always been doing this? One thing that's pretty unique for Massachusetts is people are saying hello to people they don't know, right? Because we're all so happy. So I hope you can feel my enthusiasm. It's wonderful to be in the office, seeing some colleagues here. And I'm thrilled today because I'll have two colleagues joining us for the discussion. So welcome to Recognize This. As you guys know, hashtag Recognize This, or shout out to Jimmy Fallon and Justin Timberlake, I think, for the hashtag. And this is our live stream on LinkedIn where we talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly of creating a more human workplace. And by the way, all of that's fine. That's what being human is about, right? Coming together and being excited about the opportunities ahead, even if those opportunities are the result of facing down challenges and turning those challenges into the strategies to the promised land. So we are thrilled to have you join us here today. And by the way, I said it a few weeks ago, and I'm going to say it again. And well, I want to say it every month, and that is Happy Pride Month to each of you. It is such a special month. I shared some personal stories about my own family and the topic of pride and about creating a place of belonging for the LGBTQIA++ community at work. I am so thrilled to be talking about this topic and working together with each of you to make it happen. It was a fantastic conversation that we had with Katrina Kibben and Aaron Byrne about the work they're doing to create that more accepting, and inclusive workplace. Today, we're continuing that conversation, and we're going to get really practical. The truth is, there are many ways to bring a workplace of belonging, to raise it, to create it, to cultivate it. There are so many different ways. Today, we're going to talk about three of them. So the first is ERGs, or employee resource groups, which we did start that conversation a few weeks ago. And I have a wonderful colleague here today who's going to help us continue in talking about what does it take to set up an ERG that truly feels like a place where people's voices can be heard, where honest conversations can happen, and where people come together for the companies that they love and make them even better than they were the day before. We're going to talk about the intersection of emerging technology, people, and business, and how things like machine learning and augmented and artificial intelligence can come together in a way that helps us rethink how we communicate with each other. And that is such a critical component when it comes to creating a more inclusive place of belonging, right? The words we use, how we talk to each other, what we say. We hear a lot about microaggressions, for example. Those things are very real to the person who receives them. So can't wait to talk about that. And then finally, this whole concept around recognition, which is really just the foundation of Work Human, that humanity that comes with, I see you, I celebrate you, I am grateful to you, and here's why. And then having that relationship redeemed, there is nothing like it. And there is no reason why we cannot have that in the workplace. So looking forward to that. Now let's do a little bit of a check-in and see. Gosh, we have an awful lot of people here joining us today. We have Dr. Alan Coulter from South Carolina. Welcome, Dr. Coulter. We have Veronica Seaton. We have, Jamie Moore, Massachusetts, right on. We have, oh gosh, we're doubling here, so I might have something wrong with my stream, but welcome everyone. If you are here, say hello. If you have any comments or questions, we want to hear from you. We want to answer your questions. If you post something and we don't get to it during the live broadcast, we will reach out back to you and get you the answers that you are looking for. So with that, I would love to welcome my two guests today. We have Nuvs Jain. He is our product solutions partner here at WorkHuman. He is awesome and wonderful, and I think he might love these products even more than I do, which is a shock. So I don't know, Nuvs, maybe we're going to go head to head on that one. And then we have our colleague John Leahy, who's one of the founders of Sparkle, WorkHuman's LGBTQIA++ employee resource group. So I'd love to welcome you two here. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks. Great to join you and John, Patty.
Hi, Patty. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So you guys ready to get started? Ready to have some good conversation?
Absolutely.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, let me first start by asking you, are you jealous I'm in the office and you're not with me? Because I think that's really what the people want to know. Yes. Yeah.
I'm glad you're there.
Yes, it is wonderful. It's pretty amazing, right? There's an energy that comes from being here, and that's saying something for someone like me who has worked remotely her entire very long career. So thanks so much, and for being here, and really excited to dive in. And John, I'd like to start with you. It is Pride Month, and I wanted to ask you, before we get into the three ways in which you can bring DEI to life within a workplace, I'd love to ask you, what does pride mean to you?
That's a very good question. For me, I think that pride, I kind of think of it in two different ways. There's one of the how I think about it externally, and then for me personally. And I think that at the crux of all of it is that it's living an authentic life. So when I think about the workplace, it's about bringing awareness and visibility to the LGBTQ community, recognizing all the progress that has been made, and then acknowledging that there's still a long way for us to go. You know, we live in a society where things are so different depending on where you live. And so I think, and for me on a personal level, and the reason why I become so involved with Sparkle and with everything at WorkHuman, is that it's a way for me to remember my sister who unfortunately passed away in a car accident in 2018. For me, she was one of the most unapologetically authentic people that I've ever met. And she was actually the first person that I came out to in my family, and I was the first person that she came out to. So we have a really special bond that continued up until her passing. And anyone that knows me at work would probably say that I tend to be pretty reserved and private. So it was a bit of an adjustment when I started at WorkHuman, getting comfortable with the notion of bringing my whole self to work. And my sister's passing kind of was that catalyst and really trying to draw something positive out of a personal tragedy. So it's being able to share that, be part of Sparkle, and working to improve visibility and recognition. That's really what Pride is all about for me.
John, that is, I'm very sorry about your sister's passing. And I cannot imagine what that is like, and the love between the two of you. That's something that lives forever and does not replace. I'm so sorry that happened, and I'm so grateful to you for sharing this. You shared your story. Our ERGs are a very big part of the fabric of our company. And we have our kickoff meeting, as most companies do, in the beginning of the year, very early in Q1. And the ERGs are a very, very, very big part of that. And so, John, you had shared in that internal meeting as part of the keynote your story. And, you know, what that is like from someone who is pretty private, right, about things. And the fact that your journey that you shared with people, something that is a pain that many of us will never feel and don't want to ever have to experience, you made it okay for the rest of us to talk about the things that are uncomfortable and yet be able to do it in a way that enables everyone around you to be vulnerable. Everybody's different when it comes to what their whole self is. In America, we tend to mean everything. In other parts of the world, and introverts are different than extroverts, but other parts of the world, bringing your whole self to work is something different. And the point is, you get to decide what that actually means. And I am grateful to you for sharing so much of yourself, John.
Thanks.
So well, thank you. Thank you. I agree, Dr. Coulter. Thank you for opening your heart, John. Just amazing. And so I'd like to talk a bit about the ERGs. So here at WorkHuman, we have our Sparkle ERG, which we introduced in our last episode. And John, that you are one of the founders of. And again, that is our LGBTQIA plus ERG. We have the DEI ERG, Parents at WorkHuman. And I've talked with quite a few people. As you know, I'm a newer addition to the WorkHuman family. And Sparkle was started after I started here. It was one of the first kind of branded projects, internal projects I worked on, and it was just incredible. But having been here for about a year, the evolution of the ERGs is very apparent to me. I'd love to hear from you, someone who's been here a bit longer than I have, and actually from both of you. And Nuvs, actually, why don't we start with you, if it's okay? What is different when it comes to the ERGs now versus a year ago? And then as you're looking forward, what are your goals, your hopes, your dreams for the ERGs?
Yeah, thank you for the question. So I'm part of the DEI group and Parents at WorkHuman, as you said. And I think since we went into lockdown and we've expanded the membership of each of these ERGs, they've really become the social fabric of the organization. They're a place to really get comfort and advice and information to share, knowing that someone understands what you're going through, because we're all going through this in our own unique ways. And I think they've become critical to our culture here at WorkHuman. Frankly, without having those resources there, life would be much more difficult. Work life would be much more difficult without those colleagues around us.
It's true. It's taken on a different meaning, right? It's taken on a global shared experience. It's taken on a different meaning, not only to our company, the place you can come to regardless of where you sit in the world, the place you can come to regardless of who you are in the world and at the company. It's become a kind of cultural thread, and pretty quickly. It's quite amazing.
Yeah. And to your question about what the focus should be in the future as it grows, it needs to continue that way, right? And I think we will. We've grown tremendously. We've hired a lot of people. In fact, we're probably going to run out of room when we get back to our offices, the two locations. And these connections that have been built virtually are what's going to sustain us as we move forward. It's important that companies have that space for employees. For me, the ERG is not just the space, but the idea that you can spend time. Your managers want you to spend time to connect with others in the organization. It's not just about the work you do day in, day out. They want you to build connections. They want you to address the concerns of your colleagues, and they're giving you the space and time to devote to it.
Yeah, it's been amazing. And John, as we switch over to you, I'd love to hear from the folks tuning in. I did not mention you, Dina Shade. Thank you so much for joining us from Plano, Texas. And for those of you I haven't welcomed, welcome. And I'd love to hear from you what your experience of ERGs have been. It really did start in a by the people, for the people. They were, ERGs were not funded in any way by the organization. And then HR departments started to give money for external speakers or for parties, right? And now it's become part of the fabric. And yet, it is still independent. In terms of being able to be that safe place, there's just more of a collective voice coming together and saying, how do we leverage the goodness coming out of these connections And these, the way that we do them at Work Human is I am not LGBTQIA++, but I could be part. The ERG would welcome me in, right? Well, maybe John won't. I don't know. We'll find out in a second. But it's really an affinity on the topic and on belonging and where we can give voice. And so this has been a newer adventure for me on the inclusion of ERGs and the inclusiveness of ERGs as something that is supported, of course, but also, help to fund. We do real branding around it. We make it a thing, a core tenet of who we are. John, with that said, I'd love for you to talk a bit more, if you wouldn't mind, adding on to what we talked about the last time with Aaron, about the Sparkle ERG in particular, and where you've seen that in particular evolve. And I don't remember, John, if we're quite at the year mark for Sparkle or not. And then where you see us being able to have an impact through Sparkle moving forward.
Yeah, so it's been really interesting launching an ERG during the pandemic. So I haven't had the opportunity to actually meet our colleagues over in Dublin that were part of the founders group and everybody that has joined it since then. But it's funny that we feel this sense of community, whereas before we kind of started on two different paths. There was a group here in the US that was kind of trying to found some sort of LGBT group, and then we had people over in Dublin doing the same thing. And so for us to be able to come together, it's really made it this company-wide thing that otherwise would probably be localized, and then we wouldn't be able to have these different discussions. And we put on a couple of different workshops that, like Pride 101. So what is Pride Month? What's the history behind it? And to get the perspective from Ireland versus the US versus other countries. So it's been super interesting to just have that global view as opposed to it just being localized to the US or Ireland. Moving forward, I know that we talk a lot at Sparkle meetings about how exciting it will be to actually have an in-person event at some point. Pride parades and all of that are super, super important, fun celebration moments for the community. So really looking forward to doing that. And then continuing all of our work with these different workshops around, we've had one about pronouns. So just picking on different topics that highlight certain aspects of the LGBT community. And then we do have this huge appetite within the company, and I think certainly around the world, to continue having those conversations and education around different topics that people might not have thought about or might not, have had the chance to dig in more.
Isn't it so interesting? This is a place of work. And we are talking about the most human of things within work, where we might not be able to have those discussions out in the community. And that brings us to, I'd like to just talk about this before we move on to topic number 2, which is that intersection of tech, people, and business and the role that it plays on this topic. But in terms of ERG, I guess my first question or next follow-up question to you, John, is why did you join this ERG? And then my next thing is, there's just an awful lot of discussion. What exactly is a business? Is it just a really big set of teams? Is it a family? Is it a community? And it's probably a mix of those things, depending on who you are and what perspective you are taking. But I would love in your, part of your answer, like the why did you join? How are you viewing the ERG and the context of the role that it plays in your life in particular? What was missing before that you didn't know would also be quite interesting. And do you view it as a community, a family, a team, all of the above that's contributing to this bigger experience of being an employee at a company?
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think to start, the reason why I joined or thought it was important to get together and work on this is that it seemed like it really fit in with what we were trying to do as a company. Talking about recognition and making sure that people feel that they belong. So that for me it was super important. And so, thinking about an ERG, it's a group of people that might otherwise not be, represented within the population or might be underrepresented, that sort of thing. So I think that for me, that was really why I thought it was important. And for some reason, I think it was like the catalyst of losing my sister and just looking for some sort of outlet to like for that grief in a positive way. I think that was kind of a huge reason why I thought, I would raise my hand and kind of just like stick my neck out there and just like say like, hey, I want to be involved with this. And I lost the other part of your question.
It's just the role that it plays in your life, but I think you answered it, right?
Yeah,
It reminds me of what Martina Campbell said here, which is connection is key. Mm-hmm. And so it sounds like, John, it was a place for you to be connected with other humans. Mm-hmm. And my goodness, just listening to you, what a legacy. Like what a legacy you are doing out of something so incredibly tragic. And now I get it. Like, I listened to your words before, but about your sister, now I get it. I get the legacy that you are leaving behind on behalf of both of you. Mm-hmm. And think about that, John. You are making it that much easier for the person coming behind you, right?
Yeah,
to be able to do the same thing and be able to take your legacy and build on top of that, right? Mm-hmm. Like that's amazing. That's an amazing thing to do for your fellow humans inside and outside of work. So thank you. I will absolutely aspire to be as brave as you, because it is brave to open your heart like that. It really is. My goodness. So now let's talk about machines. So, look, I'm someone who's worked in enterprise tech my entire adult life. I see only beauty when it comes to the role of enterprise technology, not just in a let's work differently, be more efficient, more effective, but let's add on that last piece. And by the way, that disruption, right? Disruption is when something's inefficient and ineffective and a status quo, and you can't stop until it is more efficient, more effective. I've added on the word inequitable, because everybody should be able to participate in the workforce in a way that makes sense to them, for them, and then pays it forward for the organizations that they work with, either as a contractor, employer, or whatever that might be. And in technology, there is no other bigger impact we can have on humanity in the workplace. And that is a very big deal. We are all humans working. Some of the work absolutely will be replaced by technology, but that just means other new roles we haven't even thought about yet are going to still be needed by humans. But Nuvs, I'd love to talk about, I know, a topic that's one of your favorites, and that is how we are using machine learning and artificial intelligence in something that we call the Inclusion Advisor, which is something that focuses in on language. So I'd like for you to talk a little bit about that, right? Like, so John, I think it was you talked about, okay, we're talking about pronouns, right? And there are words, there are phrases, and of course, that's not everything, but it is certainly a start in a place to which other conversations can happen. So we talk about here at Work Human, this evolution of humanity and technology, and how, they're coming together in new and different ways. Nuvs, can you talk a bit more about what is Inclusion Advisor, but maybe start with why it was created, and then a bit about, I know it's in its early adopter phase, what are you seeing and why are you excited about it?
Sure. So several years ago, we formed an NLP team, natural language processing team, headed by Dr. Yi Chu, who's another wonderful colleague of ours. And she built up a team of linguists who went through the recognition moments that have already been written between humans on our platform. And they were able to identify and see that there was some bias in the messages that had been written. So they built what they call a taxonomy of bias. And using that, they were building artificial intelligence, augmented intelligence models that can help identify that in the moment. So what makes this exciting is we've all gone through in our career different types of DEI training, how to be careful in the words you use. And with this tool, what's able and possible is we can give people a moment to pause and really consider in the moment versus doing training separately. In that moment, what are the words I'm using? Can I write something better? Can I write something that's more impactful? Can I write something that is much more positive than I may think it is? We all have unconscious biases, and it's helpful to have something that points this out to you in a neutral way. So what this does now is it gives people an opportunity to say, okay, this is a message. This is what I've been told is a possibility as being misconstrued by the recipient and others who read it. Here are some suggestions. Take an opportunity to change that. And what we found with our early adopters, Merck in particular, who's been using this for a while now with a pilot group, is 75% of the time, people actually take that opportunity to change their content. So that means we can actually effectively change behavior, which is tremendously exciting to hear that. And because of that, Merck has now gone global. All of their employees have access to this, and it's been fantastic to see this in use now.
It really has. So I want to touch on a few things, and we talk about this topic and most of the things that that we talk about when we talk about humanity. And so everybody has the human condition if you're human, and that human condition, as we're talking about it here, is essentially discriminatory behavior. Most of us are pretty good humans, right? So we like to think we are not discriminatory. Yeah. It actually starts at about the age of 3, and it starts in the form of prejudice. And that prejudice comes from just kind of taking in the words around us that have turned into meaning. That prejudice then gets validated and turned into stereotypes. So any set of situations that come together will result in this, or this person who reminds me of that person is going to be that, right? So that's prejudice. That then gets validated and gets formed into unconscious bias. So our neurons are then taking that and Nuvs, right now, how many bits of information do you think your brain is processing as you and I interact with each other right now?
20 to 30%.
What is it? 20
to 30% is my guess.
Okay, so what do you think that is? You think it's 20 to 30% of your overall
I'll
brain?
say 20%.
Okay,
yeah.
So right now, your brain is processing 50 bits of information consciously. Okay. It is unconsciously processing 50 million bits. Mm-hmm. You're not even close, right? So those are the unconscious biases that then get turned into discriminatory behavior. We have 150 different unconscious biases that play at our brains at any given time just at work, all formed from that trajectory I just told you, and always added on, right? So every decision we all make is biased. There's only one thing that stops unconscious bias in its tracks, and that is decision interruption at time of decision. That is what we are talking about here. Are the words I'm using going to result in the impact I want them to have? When I recognize John for the incredible contribution he made to my day, to my project, to whatever those things are, to the company, and I write it in a way that John will not be able to receive and therefore understand what he did that the rest of us want him to do again, that's a problem. That's what this is about. It is not about the blame. It is not about the shame. The other piece that you mentioned that I love that Merck called out, Merck's been at this game for a very long time, and there are other companies as well. The intelligence is awesome. The inability to operationalize that kind of change has to happen at the individual level, and it's pretty much failed because it's always in addition to how I work. The programs, the education, those are important, but they're not enough. So the fact that you're doing decision interruption as part of how you work, that's amazing with this. And so sorry everyone for the lesson here, but these contexts are critical. It is a very complicated thing to get inside of a process that happens without us even knowing it, right? So that is so cool. And I cannot wait to see where this takes us. Just absolutely amazing learning from the early adopters. John, as we think about the role that this kind of technology plays in creating more efficient, more effective, and more equitable decisions around the way we communicate to each other, and no doubt those kinds of learnings over time not only will impact what I type into a machine, it's probably going to impact how I communicate, period, right? You just can't help but embed and create a new set of unconscious biases. What are you hoping to see areas of other kinds of improvements from something like an inclusion advisor?
Yeah, I think that the biggest thing that I see is that it just allows us to improve opening up conversations that otherwise could be considered difficult or awkward. I know that, like, for me, it can be at times a little bit awkward and difficult to receive feedback personally, but if you're getting something from a machine at first, that's like, oh, maybe you should rethink this. It's kind of more of a, like everyone is going to experience that at some point when you're writing something some sort of feedback. So I think that's where it's, we'll be able to open up those conversations and have that type of dialogue that otherwise it would be difficult to broach as a company or as a
yeah. It really would. Like, how do you bring that up, right, in a break room? And actually it leads me to that last piece, which is the role of recognition. We are a company built on recognizing the good in the person next to you, the people around you, virtually or physically. It really is the heartbeat of everything that we do. And it's no different when we're talking about a topic like this, John, to your point, which can be quite sensitive. There are plenty of populations who don't want to have this kind of conversation with underrepresented populations. It's uncomfortable, and yet the conversation needs to happen from everyone. So where do you see the connections between working in a recognition culture and the topic of pride, of DEI, of bringing the self to work you want to bring to work? John, let's continue with you, and then Nuvs, I'd like to close it out with you.
Yeah, so I think for me, like working at a company that appreciates recognition, and that's what we have at the center of what we do, it's really made me more aware of different perceptions that I can have, and acknowledging that it's like the experience that I have is only mine. And, we have a meeting together, or even this discussion that we're having, the three of us will have a different outtake from it, but it can still be, it's something that it's good to acknowledge, and it's something to celebrate. So I think that's the biggest thing for me, is that it's made me more aware of, some things that I can work on, and then some good things that I have going on as well.
I love that. Nuvs, what about you?
So what I think works best for me with recognition, what I like about it the most is that, there are the big projects everyone knows about. They know the key players. It's finding out the unsung heroes, or the actions taken that you're not aware of, that your colleagues are doing, and shining a spotlight on it, right? You may not have an opportunity to do that, but when you are hearing that by itself, but when you go on the social feed and see all of that, it's very uplifting, and it reinforces why I love working in a company like this. So that's what it is for me.
I'm with you. I'm with you both. It's amazing. It's a wonderful way to get to know people that you might not talk to, right, for quite a while, because you see who they are from the eyes of the people around them. And I love what you said. It doesn't have to be the one who's always at the top of the mountain as the rock star. It is the unsung hero who deserves to be called out. Well, I have to tell you, I recognize, I see you. I am grateful to both of you. I'm proud to work alongside both of you. Thank you for sharing so much of us with you today. Thanks for joining us. Andy Yeager from Reno, Nevada. Fantastic. And as we close out, I'd love to welcome each of you to join me for our next episode on July 7th. We're welcoming back Dr. Misha Ann Martin. Misha Ann is one of the analysts, scientists working in our research org, and she is going to talk to us about one of my favorite research projects in a very long time, and that is, why does psychological safety matter at work? It is one of the key traits of a human workplace, and I cannot wait to dive in. Thank you, Nuvs and John. Absolute pleasure. You are welcome back anytime. And thank you, everybody out on LinkedIn Live Land, for joining us. And thank you, team behind the scenes, for putting it all together. I'll see you guys in a few weeks.
Thank you. Bye.